Okay, this is the August 9th, 2019, did I say August? January 9th, 2019 meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee, the Council's Planning and Economic Development Committee. Committee members present: Judy Doche, Ginny Farrell, Derek Johnson, Alfredo Ballerin. Other council members present: Joyce Love, Owusu Anani, and staff: Jared Pellerin. And welcome everyone. We're here to discuss Ordinance 3262, 19, it says 18, yeah. An ordinance amending paragraph B and paragraph C of Part 3 and Part 6, of Chapter 375 and Part 6 of Chapter 375 of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to the operation of methadone dispensaries. This is a follow-up meeting to one we had on July 18th. And so we were to review some proposed changes to the legislation. And we have received copies of that information, but planning staff is not present tonight. And so what we thought we'd do is go ahead and have a brief discussion. You wanted to mention a couple things, but why don't we start out with public comment? Is there anyone here who would like to give public comment? Okay, seeing no one. Yes, go ahead, sir.
I just want to offer myself up. I'm the director of the Central Avenue bid, who's across the street from McKernan.
Oh, yes, come on up.
As a resource if you need me. I
see.
Particular comments, but I certainly could be asked. I know several of the council.
All right, thank you.
Yeah,
we appreciate that. What's his name? And your name, sir?
Anthony Capiz.
Oh, yes, Anthony.
I've been there 20 years.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming, Anthony. No. Anthony Capiz from the Central Avenue bid is here. All right, comments from committee members on the proposed amendments to the legislation.
So I took a look at this, and I also did some listening to the recording of the July 18th meeting, because there were a couple things in this that I thought were not addressed, or that we were a little unclear. The first thing I want to note is that in listening to that, it does appear as though they have addressed a lot of the comments. Ginny had made the comment regarding park or playground. Mm-hmm. Mr. Spencer had indicated maybe only a playground, creating the 1,000-foot buffer from a playground would be appropriate. However, he has included park or playground. And I do kind of think that is a little bit more appropriate than just limiting it to the playground, because I think then you can get involved in a dispute of where does the playground area end, where we know where the ends of a park is. He has done a good job of making sure that we explicitly are preventing outdoor queuing in this. I had raised the issue with regard to institutional locations, right. That he thought it would be appropriate for maybe Albany Med to have such a facility as part and parcel of this. And what he's done is he's changed it from a conditional use to an accessory use, and he's limited it only to hospitals, because one of the things I pointed out is a lot of campus institutional uses are actually educational institutions, right. And we didn't want that being parceled out to be part of that. So he's limited that and also made it only an accessory use. So, for example, we talked about Whitney Young does some dispensing of methadone mm-hmm. Down there, but it's only it's an insignificant portion of that. And I thought that he might have to get involved in some specific limitations of uses, etc. But the accessory use, I think, really does take care of that. Two things that I do want to note that there are two typos in this that we need to correct.
Yeah, we did receive something from Joe Igo about one, I saw that one.
Okay.
Schedule
But
A.
in terms of substantive issues, Mr. Spencer did state when we were discussing about having this in mixed-use community highway, and we talked a little bit about that would include the Hanford Plaza, but probably not because of the 1,000-foot
Right.
restriction now, but it would then include the Price Chopper Plaza or the Home Depot Plaza and some other things. And he said that he would be amenable to perhaps striking that. He is concerned, so he said that, I'm talking about what he said on the, back in July, when I listened to this. And I think that he's left it in there as a conditional use for that.
Right.
Maybe to let us make that decision. So I think that is one thing that we should be discussing. He did say we do have to be cautious that we're not totally excluding them from being able to operate any place in the city. However, we still would have the location in the campus institutional and then also in the industrial.
Well, let me make a
one.
comment about that, the hospital, as far as the accessory use, and I didn't have a chance to look at it, one of my concerns is when you do link it to a hospital, there still can be a lot of neighborhood impacts. So I'm not, I use the example of up at Albany Medical Center, they have various, in the past there's been, or the Capital District Psychiatric Center too, when there's not, when the programming, there have been issues with individuals who have used some of the services at both Albany Med and Capital District Psychiatric Center, and then they've had impacts on the nearby neighborhood because of individuals with substance abuse issues, mental health issues. There have been some neighborhood impacts on that. So I wasn't sure if this accessory use that would be for the campus institutional zoned area, if there would be any kind of neighborhood input on that. And that was one of the things I was going to talk to him about.
I think that's a good point. It does limit, when it's a conditional use permit, to a specified number of monthly visits. So, for example, if we were concerned, Arbor Hill, you might have, particular concern if all of a sudden this particular location shuts down, and then there's more expansion down at Arbor Hill, and
At Whitney Young you're talking about.
yeah, right, Whitney Young specifically, and maybe some of the other locations. Maybe what we want to do is, even where there's an accessory use, require the accessory use to specify the number of visits in it, and essentially have the accessory use also be subject to a conditional use. And I don't, that hasn't been done.
Well, it does have conditional here, though. Now that I'm looking on the chart, has conditional and accessory. Does everybody have that?
Conditional is crossed out?
Oh, it is crossed out? Okay, I couldn't see that.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
so that's now supposed to be crossed out and
All right.
A is underlined.
So that's something we can follow up on with staff.
I guess, the question is that then the solution that we want? When you say we follow up with staff, I think we should.
But also just to have a conversation about that.
So I have a question. All right, I see, and I'm glad to hear 1,000 feet away from a school. But then it makes me ask a question, if they're doing that at Whitney Young, that's within 1,000 feet of a school. So are they grandfathered in, or?
Oh, that's a good question. So what about Whitney Young's program?
Yes.
yeah.
So that's interesting, because on the one hand, when we're talking about Albany Med, I'm like, well, you know, it has to be 1,000 feet away from, you know, school, playground, you know, these other uses. Or, you know, a residential area, and that protects that neighborhood, but then, you know, this is, there's always these competing interests in terms of how, you know, you change something here and it squishes out of here in terms of the you know,
Yeah.
potential negative,
The one on Central
unintended.
Avenue was right behind, what's the name of the school?
Yeah,
There's a school right
Yeah.
there.
It's right there. You can walk out that door and walk right in.
Sheridan Prep.
Sheridan Prep.
Oh,
It's,
yeah.
you can walk out the back and walk right in their front door.
Well, the other thing I would want to ask there, they have a 3-year contract, so once this is passed, do they, I mean, what,
Who has it?
Well, that's the other thing
the
about
methadone
this.
dispensary?
Chris specifically
Central.
said at the beginning of his presentation that one of the things that he had intended to put in his draft when he came to us in July was an amortization period. And he explicitly
And I don't see that,
explained
okay.
that while generally you grandfather, you know, everything's grandfathered in, when there's, you know, a public need to, you know, you can give people a reasonable amount of time to terminate a particular purpose in a particular location. And so that was item number 2 of what I wanted to raise.
Okay.
Is that simply isn't in here, and I don't know why that wasn't
All right, so,
included. There are some generally, and he had also indicated that he would help them find another location, that it is a 3-year lease. And, you know, certainly one of the whole reasons why we're here looking at this particular change to the zoning code is because what's going on in the current location. So we want to, you know, either severely limit that, which isn't done in this, or, you know, or I don't think sufficiently, or we want to require them to move out of their, you know, current location. So that's the biggest issue I see in this that was not addressed in this draft.
well, as far as severely limiting, I mean, how would that, I mean, you know,
Well, they're limited now because they've been.
in terms of numbers that they can say?
They've been capped at their numbers for now. So they are limited at this point.
But the numbers are large.
The numbers, all of us, it's over.
They're large.
It's over, I think, 542.
That's a lot of people.
That is a lot of.
Per day?
Per day.
Yeah, that's a lot of.
What was the number, Joyce?
The lease is over 500.
It's over 500. I don't have the
Over
exact.
500.
But I know they've been capped.
No, it's 700 on Central Avenue. He just said 700.
Wow. Anthony?
It's approximately 13,000 visits a month.
Okay. That's the
Because not everybody
current,
comes every day.
thank you.
That's available through the Oasis Data Research Center.
And then on Saturday, they get for Saturday and Sunday, right? Because they're not there on Sunday.
Open Sunday.
My understanding is they are now open 7 days a week,
Oh.
dispensing, but not everybody is eligible in the program to receive a take-home dose. So that's
Oh,
why they
right,
open 7 days a week.
That's true.
Okay.
To my understanding, they had grown and they had been shrunk back because of Oasis has had a lot of complaints and a lot of issues have been brought up with this center and the location of it. Specifically, the location of it is the problem. The fact that they have that number of clients is actually not a bad thing because it means that they are reaching the population that needs the assistance. It's the location that's the problem. The location was selected by individuals who are not from the capital district who were not used to, did not think it would be such a problem in our little neighborhood. And it has become a problem. It's become an issue for businesses, it's become an issue for residents. I've gotten several complaints from residents about issues on Bradford Street, which is right across the street and on the other side. The day after we met, I spoke with the head of that program because they had another issue at the planning department for a building they bought across the street for a school that has been placed in that building. And I spoke to her and I told her this was coming down the pipeline. I told her that we were looking to make it retroactive. And I told her that I wanted to be upfront with her about this because it's, I've gone to several of their meetings that they haven't been spirited, let's say it that way. But I also believe being upfront and letting people know where we are. And I also want to give it time to find and relocate, so that those patients don't go without. I mean, we do have an epidemic. We do want to make sure people get the help that they need to get to a better place. But I also explained to her that moving may be the best thing for them. Because right now, there's so much pressure on them and on the state agencies that fund them, because of the issues that they've incurred, that they're not going to be able to develop. And if there were other locations that are better fit, the problems that we have to do with the location. Not the work that they're doing inside the building, but the location that they selected, the traffic that they create.
So it sounds like you would be more in favor of limiting the number of individuals who are served there, just over the period before?
I think we need to find a location
A
that
location.
fit. And I wouldn't want to limit it. If it has a location that has parking, that's away from,
Right.
In
I-
Colony.
Well,
I guess-
East Greenbush,
I guess I was going to
So
say,
much parking.
I was going to say limiting the number of people, because it's a problem now,
yes, it is.
while we look for a new location. Is that a
No, I
thought?
think, let me be very clear. I think we need to have a retroactive. I do think, like Chris said, we have to give them at least a year, to find a location.
But Alfredo, we've been giving them, why are we giving them another year when we keep telling them? And the mayor, you wasn't at that meeting with the mayor told them they need to start moving. Anthony was there. And Arlene Way was willing to work with them with a real estate person, to try to find something, because, and they threw out different ideas out there where,
I told them Menage. I
Menage,
told them
that's what
that the old Save-A-Lot. If you remember the old Save-A-Lot and the dollar store,
Yep.
Right.
that building has been vacant for some time.
So we're
and-
basically just zoning. We're like, hey, look at all these other places.
well, see, but the thing is, Jenny, they need to be off the street.
Yeah. No, I'm not
They need
disagreeing
to be,
with this
and
at
I'm
all.
not trying to be, trying to be mean but they need to be off the street where the cars can pull up, go in, and don't hold up traffic, and you don't see 600 or 700 people or 200 or 300 people at one time. I'm over there every day. I ride through there every day because it's the area I represent. And you see all these strange faces, and you see it fighting, and CBS, and the guy on the corner store, he put a better surveillance camera in his store on the corner over there
Yeah.
because of all the activity that's going on. CBS is hit hard.
No, I wasn't saying that.
No,
that was a
I
bad
know,
thing.
yeah.
I'm all for that. This is just kind of a problematic thing.
If I could lend you just some quick insight, I'm trying
Sure,
to
go ahead.
pontificate to it. It's a very complex business, and I think you said it well. For you folks to consider, it would, not to compare the two, but if someone came to you and said, I want to open a McDonald's in the middle of the street, you would ask for a site plan review, you would ask for a traffic study, which actually happened on Central Avenue. The business is delivered by vehicles, by cars. that presents a challenge depending on the location you choose. We could have easily accommodated them at, say, 855 Central Avenue at the west end where the DMV is going.
Right.
It would have been off the street. It's a controlled private property. I think the suggestion about the egress that the councilman brought up is legitimate, that these folks are being preyed upon because of where they are in the density populated part of the city,
Yeah.
that they're easy prey
Right.
in the middle of the city. If you think about it like anything else, if someone's addicted to drugs and I want to sell drugs to somebody, I know where to find them.
Right.
If they're sequestered in a property that's off the beaten path, it's not about necessarily the volume, it's can the location support the volume. So I can see it firsthand that both through prostitution, solicitation, drug dealing, and then the ability that property owner has no way to control the outside of the public right-of-way on the sidewalk. That's where the problems all occur. So if you had a property like, say, the Westgate Plaza or whatever, not to suggest that it goes there, believe me, but where the egress to the property could be queued, controlled, and then the egress and access to the clients could be controlled, you would provide yourself a much better buffer to the community ills that it would bring as a result of all of these people from outside the city coming in by Medicare. So it's just a little insight. It goes much more deeper than that. You're welcome to ask me anything you want, but it's like running a McDonald's for treatment with 2 drive-through lanes that are running 7 hours or
Wow.
5 hours a day.
Okay, thank you for that input,
Anytime.
Anthony. All right, any other issues people would like to raise? Unfortunately, I think we'll need to meet again and,
Chris is on his way.
oh, okay. Well, when did you receive that information?
A little less than 10 minutes.
I'd like to see retroactive
Oh, okay,
put in
thank you.
the language, but that's not in the language.
What's not in the language?
That's just, it becoming retroactive.
What, Alfreda?
What Judy stated, that it's not in the language, the fact that it would affect current businesses, or current, I'm just gonna call it business, current businesses that are, that's what I'd like to see added. I agree
Okay.
with Judy, that I think is the biggest thing that's missing is, it's not addressing the current problem.
All right,
If we don't have that language.
Okay. make sure that's in it.
I would love to see them go on tomorrow. But I know it ain't gonna happen. But how long have you been putting up with this?
2.5 years.
Yes. And we talking about another 3-year lease? Another 2-year lease? With these people?
It may be 2.5 at this point. Yeah. But keep in mind they acquired property across the street
Yeah, they had that across the street, yes.
where I think it would be important if that lease was to expire, the consideration of what they're going to do with the building at 169 Central Avenue.
Okay.
They
No.
purchased a building?
Yeah, they own the building across the street with the church. But I know they just put a school in there. And that
Is it a
was,
school? I thought it was a daycare.
it's a Montessori school. I mean, it's the size of a daycare, but they're considered a school. Because they go up to, I think, the 5th grade. But that was actually, I thought it was a benefit to have that there because it limits what else they can put in that building.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it would be very difficult for them to move it there with their current tenant. Plus the fact that I've gotten complaints from their current tenants about trash and needles and so forth. So,
That needle is a big issue for me.
yeah.
That's a big issue for me. And Officer Sadaka, he's good. Because he goes over there just about every morning and removes the needles before school starts. And he's not qualified to pick them up. I have to give him credit for that. Go ahead.
And again, just, as a point of information, we did some research to find out who is qualified to pick up needles. The only folks that we know of in the capital region are CDTA maintenance workers.
That's right.
That are certified in what they call, I believe, STICS training. And at this point, I do not let my maintenance crew pick up needles. We call the police department. And I would, again, speaking as an advocate and a representative of businesses, I would highly recommend that the city consider some STICS training for police department officers and DGS employees,
Thank you.
because they're encountering this in trash cans and on the streets every day.
Every day.
And the liability is significant if an employee gets stuck with a dirty needle. And I don't think anybody's trained in it as far as I know.
Oh, okay, so this is an issue just,
Just to bring to your attention.
yeah, thank you. Hi, Chris, why don't you come up, because we have some questions.
Sorry, I had the Finance Committee on my schedule, not this one.
Oh,
So that's why I
okay.
got confused. I thought it was tomorrow.
So we've had a good discussion about the proposed amendments.
You're
There's
not
a-
on our agenda for finance.
No, I know, but the police department is for
Oh,
the
okay.
cameras, so I just wanted
Okay.
to,
We have, so we've gone
just
through a
love
lot of the changes that you've made. We've got a few other things that we wanted to discuss.
okay, and I've got one to add that I didn't get on.
Okay.
I'm going to give you copies of these. It was really just about amortization, making sure
Oh, okay.
ones that were already
Oh.
in were, so it's, just says, any methadone dispensary use shall be required to comply with the aforementioned standards within 1 year of, right now it's January 31st, but it could be upon passage of this.
Okay.
So, I forgot to get that one in there, so.
All right, great. Let's see.
Looks like enough.
Thank you. Is that in here then, Chris?
Yep.
All right, great. A couple of other issues came up. Let's see. One concern, we know that methadone dispensaries in campus institutional were made an accessory use.
Yep.
And we brought up some concerns about that because, say you did put it at, there were a couple different things. For example, Whitney Young, someone
Yep.
said Whitney Young has a program that's near a school, so
Yep.
what would happen in that instance?
Right, that would be,
And that's prohibited, or it has to be more than 1,000 feet.
right. So that's the one, I think that was the only other one we thought of, and short of grandfathering them and then having the other one that's become an issue, grandfather, I didn't quite know the best way of dealing with that one.
I mean,
So, I mean, it could be,
I love Whitney
there's-
Young, but I feel like it's something where,
And if they were to, we don't, I
it'd be a
don't know
variance.
offhand
They'd be
how-
looking at a variance, is what they'd have to do.
Oh, okay.
So. Yeah,
I
think
don't
if-
know the size of their program currently. Does anyone?
It's tiny compared to the.
And it's controlled.
Yeah.
This is
So I
like-
think,
My
again, that's
concern
one
with
that's had no
that would
other
be a-
issues, it's
Right.
had no
Yes.
sort of
They don't
complaints.
hang out in front of the building down there.
So,
It's
but again,
very
I would
well-
well,
say-
and there is a park, I mean, it's
It's
a
a parking
different.
lot, it's, yes.
Yep.
yeah.
But still,
I-
But again, I
get
think
it.
if you
I
did
get
that,
it.
but if you did that one as, ask them to come in for the variance, I think they, they would meet most of the conditions. There's no, again, it's not a nuisance issue like some of the other ones, so.
And you would want some
Otherwise,
control,
I
would-
just keep it open and then we never get rid of the one that's
it
become a
would be
problem.
nice to
And
get
I,
to the school situation.
It would give you some control if they ever wanted to expand that program
Yep.
there too.
Yeah, so one of the things we discussed last time was getting out, I think, what was the other zone we had it in? We had it in the, sorry, mixed use. Mixed use community highway, and the reason I left that in there as a conditional is really because those tend to be, in many cases, lots where potentially you can have a pad site where it's just a single-use building with a large parking lot and not a lot of businesses in there. So then in addition, what we did was we added that the facility must be 200 feet from any other use, either on that lot or on an adjacent lot.
Well, so I can understand that.
That was the reasoning there. I mean, as much as we promote mixed uses, this would be one where within that district, we'd want to see just a, and that's probably the most appropriate
Okay, so that's across
type
the
thing.
board.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
So other than the hospital one, which is, it says in the MUCI.
But
which
then I
would be
wanted to ask
accessory.
about that, the accessory use. I was using the example of over on New Scotland Avenue, we have CDPC and Albany Medical Center. Both of them have various clinics
Yep.
that with people with substance abuse issues and some with serious mental health issues that have had an impact, a negative impact on the neighborhood at various times. And so with an accessory use, we were talking about the possibility, could we also have that be conditional in addition?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Just so that the neighborhood could talk about the impact
Yep.
that it might or might not have.
Yeah, no, I don't see a problem with that. It's just, we don't have any.
So maybe
conditional.
we should go back to having that be a conditional use, but then leave in what you have here regarding an MUCI zone.
Right, yeah, that's what I think, I didn't realize
It's
that
only allowed
as an accessory.
in conjunction with a hospital use.
Right, yeah, so, yeah, I didn't realize we had,
So the change would be with them?
so we're going to leave it as a C in the use table, so it's a conditional. In the use-specific standards, it would say, in the MUCI zone district, this use is allowed only as an accessory to a hospital use.
Okay,
That way, it's still conditional, but it's also accessory. So
okay, got it.
keeps us from having to put two letters in the
All
use
right.
table.
Anthony wants to say something.
I just want to ask a question, Chris.
Yep.
If say, somebody set up an urgent care center that was a spin-off of one of the hospital subsidiaries,
Yep.
would that be an ancillary use?
I'd have to, I don't have my zoning in front of me, so I'd have to look at the definition of hospital. So an urgent care or something like that, that's a subsidiary of a hospital, Ellis and Albany Med have a lot of those urgent cares.
Right.
So I think we'd have to go back to our definition of hospital. I would say, off the top of my head, I would say yes, but again, we're looking for institutions that are a little bit better at handling these kinds of things. So I think, but again, if,
So,
The-
so you're saying that we would include those, is what you're...
again, do you have the definition of hospital there? Yep. Sorry, I should have looked that up.
Yeah, I think that, thank you so much.
So this one says, include inpatient beds. I don't know that the
Oh,
urgent
no, no.
care, any of those include that?
So the interesting thing is that Department of Health licenses diagnostic and treatment centers that don't have inpatient beds under Article 28 as a hospital. So that would include like a urgent care kind of center. I do think that.
But we go by our zoning definition, so I think in this case, it says that include inpatient beds, so it's not, may include. I think it's pretty clear that this is different than an outpatient.
So that was the interesting thing is I've looked at just, generally global, what we're doing with our code is if that does not include diagnostic and treatment centers, then we don't have a use category for diagnostic and treatment centers. And I think it's broad enough to include diagnostic and treatment centers, but we need to tweak
Well, I
it.
think we need, that may be a definition that could be added. So, that way you can allow those where you wouldn't normally allow a hospital and things like that, so.
And what about for the purpose of this legislation?
For the purpose of this legislation, I think it's pretty clear that, it's allowed, basically where, as an accessory to a hospital. So therefore, an urgent care would not qualify based on our definition of
Okay.
hospital. That's
But
my,
then Whitney Young also would not.
no. Again, but I don't think they're in a MUCI. I did forget what zone they're in. I think they're down, are they down in the warehouse district?
No, near Arbor Hill
Arbor Hill?
Elementary.
That's right, yep.
And
I don't know
So-
what the zoning,
Yeah, I didn't look up the zoning, so.
but they need a
they're
variance.
expanding to
It looks like
urgent
it's
care on Central Avenue.
MUCU for, from my looking at
You mean
this.
on the waiver?
No, or Whitney Young.
Oh,
You see,
Whitney
I
Young.
mean, I don't feel where Whitney Young already met St. Peter's. I think the location is the issue, not, the entity. So whether
Yeah.
St. Peter's already met Whitney Young or the criminal organization, the location is the problem. And we would still have the same problems that currently exist on Central Avenue if any of those entities decided to, put a,
Was it the location or the volume too? The volume and management?
It's,
I mean, are we having issues with Whitney Young?
Well, no, Whitney Young's not on Central Avenue right now.
That's what?
So Whitney Young's not on Central Avenue.
Right.
And
No, I'm just trying to figure out, because I don't know enough about Whitney Young and that operation. And I haven't heard anything.
Whose award is that in, and is that,
Kelly, Kelly's, I think Kelly's.
I know, I was told by a representative from Senator Gillibrand that Whitney Young's program only sees about 40 people.
Mhm.
Compared to this program that has about 500 to
Right.
600 people that they see daily. So it's a bit. So volume, I mean, anything with volume is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Like the officer said, you can have a book club, and if you have 600 people going to your book club, it's going to create problems.
I'll tell my wife that.
I missed that one.
That's a good one.
I've been to a lot of these meetings, so I've heard it quite a few times.
who said,
So
who said that, Alfredo?
I can't remember the officer.
Anthony
I think it was.
Garassi?
So the issue is the location and the volume, but for me it's the location.
Okay.
Because I think if they were in a different location that could handle the parking, that was off the beaten path, I don't think we would have so many issues. But where they are seeing the number that they're seeing is creating the problems that we're having.
Right, so the question though is, you said that you think it's an MUCU, Whitney Young. So that would actually require a use variance as well. So that, I mean,
This is the map.
yeah,
here, and
so it's
that's-
not out of the realm of possibilities. The most difficult standard on a use variance is self-created hardship. Obviously, this is one where the city is changing the zoning. They didn't create the hardship, so that's a little
okay.
bit different. So I think they could generally meet most of the standards, just off the top of my head, for use and an area variance. I'd rather that's one of those unique conditions or unique circumstances, rather than try to modify this and weaken it so much to allow them to continue. I'd rather have them go seek that, but, there is the risk that they have to relocate.
Okay,
But again, it sounds like they're not serving a huge population, so
Might not.
I don't know what other services they provide. I don't think it wouldn't affect any of those, and so I don't know what their investment is in order to be able to dispense and deal with the methadone issues.
all
But
right.
we put a 1 year in there, mainly because most leases are a year.
Though they have we were just saying,
And
that
I
I
don't
believe they
know.
have the 3-year contract.
Yeah, but I think, that's something,
Is that
We'll have to deal with it.
something, I guess one of my questions was, do we have that kind of ability to require that
Yeah, I mean, anytime you,
state-
anytime you do a
program.
zoning change or non-conforming, if it's something, you have that ability to phase it out however you see fit, but generally
The
course.
municipality
Yeah,
does.
but generally the courts will look at it in terms of sort of that amortization of an investment. Right, so if
So
somebody
even if
built
it-
this beautiful building for a commercial use and it's a single-use building, it's gonna be pretty tough to say that has to be turned into residential within a year. Right, but if, or something that's really just a lease and there's not a lot of office fit out and there's not a lot of other investments that go, they didn't redo the parking lot, they didn't do all sorts of things. They lease, they don't rent. I think there's probably, it's probably a safe bet that their investment is much less than somebody
Even
who.
if there's a contract in place?
Yeah, and that may be something, that the city can work with the property owner to relief, give them some relief on that,
Oh,
so.
okay.
I mean, that's a conversation.
Yeah, I don't
That's-
know
I don't
what
really
to-
know, but, I hate to put it at 3 years because I think that just kicks the can a little too far down the road,
Yeah, no.
so. And I think,
I think
a
you-
1-year lease is a pretty
That's
typical.
kind of what they were discussing down there before you
I
walked
think
in.
it is also a fair amount of time to allow them to find a different location for them to.
And they've been put on notice. I think we've had
When
enough
did
meetings
they,
with them.
when
that
did they
this was-
establish there? So they're, some of their leases used
The
up.
problem is, they were originally established on the third floor, maybe third, fourth floor. And then, I think 2 years ago, they were able to get a lease on the same building on the first floor and expand. And that's where it created even more problems. Because
Right.
you had now a larger footprint. They kept the third floor for administrative and counseling services, and the first floor for dispensary.
Okay, we don't know when this current lease started, though.
The third floor lease is probably coming up pretty soon. And last year, I think they told me they had a 4-year lease with 3 years left.
Oh, I see.
So
That was back in the
that
summer?
was, last January, February.
Okay.
When I sat and I met with the director, and I sat there and stood outside in the cold, for about 2 hours just to get a good feel for what's going on. So,
Yeah. Oftentimes, those leases are somewhat tied to an investment that the landlord is making. So if he's fitting out an office for a particular use, he'll say, I'm willing to put all these, enhancements into the building, provided you sign a 5 or 10-year lease. So there may be some of that, but again, we can have that conversation with the property owner. But I think, it's one of the things before this, and I didn't get a chance to do this before, we didn't map this. So generally what we do is we reach out to Corp Council, make sure, if, first of all, I don't think we can zone something like this out of existence. I think there's some, particular issues with doing that, but we do have to at least go through the exercise of trying to map it out and see if there is actually a
Location.
location.
Oh, I see.
Because it's really easy to write this stuff and then you go in and you're like, oh geez, forgot about this park, or I forgot about this facility, or I forgot about this, and suddenly there's no place they can actually locate.
Well,
So it's,
it
and
might-
a lot of communities do that knowing that that's the case, and they write all these rules, and,
Yeah.
mainly you've seen that with the, adult industry in terms of bookstores and strip clubs and things like that, where people have tried to write it so tight, knowing that there's no parcel within the city that can accommodate that, so.
All right,
I
so
don't
there
wanna
is,
do that,
there is,
though. I mean, I don't want to do that.
No, what I'm saying is I can't confirm yet that what we wrote
Right.
is actually consistent, and there actually is a location that they could, I just want to make sure that we haven't inadvertently created something that's so difficult that nobody can meet that within the
Commerce
city
at,
hall.
over by, and whatever.
Well, why don't you buy the property and you lease it to them? Problem solved.
all right, so
10-year
No, I
lease.
do not want to be in that business.
it sounds like we'll need to
Just, yeah, I think if
meet
I,
again, but perhaps we can combine it with some other legislation, just to review
Yep.
these changes and a couple of the things that you've
Sure.
mentioned.
So,
Any other comments?
but I do want to make sure that we are comfortable, because that was an open question about the community highway, mixed-use community highway. That was
Yep.
something that was an open question the last time, and essentially what we're saying is we're willing to go forward with that being a requiring a conditional use permit for that. People, I mean, so that would allow currently, for example, Price Chopper Plaza, Westgate Plaza is community highway.
right,
But-
but then there's the provision that it has to be at least 200 feet from any other use of the applicable lot
So that's-
or an adjacent lot. So that's the idea. So the idea there was, if there was a community highway lot that was a standalone pad-ready site that had, surrounded by parking lots, that's kind of an ideal site for something like this. And serve this population.
Right.
And they don't have the impact with adjacent
Actually,
businesses.
when you say 200 in there, I don't even know if something like over by Waterley Commerce Avenue,
Yeah.
in that industrial site, I don't know even if
I don't know
one
what
of
the
the
lot
buildings
lines are
there.
too.
What?
I don't know where the lot lines are either, so some of them, it's multiple uses on a single lot, so it would still,
Right.
that would be, none of those would work. So you really have to have your own lot. Again, sort of that single lot that's got at least 200-foot setback from another use on another lot.
That's a very tricky provision then.
Yeah, but it may be something that there is that kind of a site, and we just didn't want to close the door on potentially MUC.
Yeah, it will be hard
CH
to
that-
find anything
Right,
at this point, it sounds like.
yeah.
So I think all of us are very interested in getting this enacted. And we need to have a hearing on it, so we need to do
Exactly.
notice. So the sooner we get changes, and I do think, based upon what you're saying about this,
Well, I can also, if everybody's comfortable with the language the way it is, I can just send you an email. You could vote out of committee
Based on these changes.
based on the fact, if I don't come
Oh.
back to you and say, we've got a mapping issue,
Okay,
and then we need to make an adjustment.
all right.
the other thing I want to note is on the amortization issue, we're not applying it looks like we're not applying any of the standards to the current location. So even this outdoor queuing kind of issue.
No, because it would,
Oh, you mean
for the existing location, so,
for this next year?
right, yeah, within 1 year of the passage of this.
Right, but
Right.
so for right now.
Yeah,
they can-
those are difficult things. So I think we have to continue to deal with that one based on nuisance and other public safety issues related to
another
that. Yeah.
Okay, so I do want to note that there's just two little typos I picked up on methadone dispensary on the second page of this, where subdivision A or whatever it is
Okay.
at this point. The third line down, it says, unless the facility may enters. So I think we want to cross out
Yep.
may.
Okay, that's the one I have.
Yeah. And then on the next one, it's simply a typo and misspelling of clients for G,
We have clinics.
second line. Yeah. Right
The
at
second
the
line.
beginning of that second line.
Oh. Yep, that's a
Those-
very,
Right there.
it's a creative spelling, that's for sure.
All right.
So I'd like to make a motion that with those changes, that we pass this out of committee with a positive recommendation contingent upon Mr. Spencer being able to confirm that there's not a mapping
Oh, we have a
issue.
second for the motion.
I
Jenny seconded. Alfredo, discussion?
I just want to be fully clear, so this is also going to affect marijuana dispensaries as well, because it's not an issue right now,
No, this is not, this is,
it used to be linked.
right. Let's see, what do we do here? Now, this is methadone, I think.
We didn't
Oh,
change
you know.
anything but the numbering for.
Yeah, no, so all it's doing there is, what you're seeing is, it used to be controlled substance marijuana dispensary, so marijuana dispensary was, it was changed so the controlled substance was not in there, just so these two wouldn't be linked.
So what are we passing for marijuana dispensaries? We're just.
The only difference was, at the end of marijuana dispensaries was methadone dispensary. So now we're creating a whole section on methadone dispensary.
But
So-
we're still going to, if
Just-
I wanted, hey, next month they may make it illegal, and I want to open up a marijuana dispensary. I still have to do it within 1,000 feet of an existing school or religion institution.
Correct,
That's
yep.
at the beginning of
Yep.
this
Yeah, I see
page.
that.
Yeah, so that remains.
But what about residential homes? There's nothing about residential homes that I can see, unless I missed it.
No, that wasn't, that had been in there for a while, so that was not a change.
Cool. I don't know that we could do that with this legislation. We would have to have
I think you have
additional
to do a separate
legislation.
one.
Visit
Yeah.
it.
Well, we
The other
could, but I think we need to be very cautious because there's one operating currently, and I don't know how close that is to any
Oh, the medical
residential.
marijuana?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Where is it located? I didn't even know we had
In
one.
Kelly's district.
Okay.
In the yeah.
In the warehouse?
I think it's the warehouse district, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, but it's
Like just
quite
outside.
possible that there is a residence within 1,000 feet of
There is.
that.
It's also pretty isolated, but it could be
Self-contained.
within 1,000 feet.
Right, right. Like, I think.
Yeah, and I don't recall when we wrote this, because I had, before we did the USDO, I did a marijuana dispensary overlay. And I can't recall if, I know a lot of the language I had in that were things that was promoted by the New York State law. And I don't know if all of that got carried into here, so I'd want to pull that back up to see if, make sure that we haven't.
I would rather not hold this legislation up for us to research that particular issue, Alfredo.
But I'll be glad to take a look
But
at that for
it
you.
sounds like something that we are going to have to take a close look at very quickly.
Yes, and I'm
Yeah.
afraid, I don't want to avoid the problems that we have here,
Yep,
where something is popped up so quickly and we didn't have the restrictions properly in place before it popped up. And if New York State makes it legal in the next few months, we may see people trying to pop themselves quicker than we want them to. In locations in locations that wouldn't be suitable for.
right. We just want to make sure they're near restaurants and other places.
We want to make sure that.
Donut shops.
We want to make sure that wherever they conduct their business is not somewhere where someone feels like they have to, their home or their family is no longer in a safe environment. That's what we want to avoid. That's what was created here.
Yep.
And that's what
I
we
think
want.
very legitimate concerns that we have to,
But all the parameters and so on, I think you're going to see it. It's going to take a while for the state to put those in place. So we will have some time.
Can I just quick
Sure.
question? This actually came up just the other day from a merchant who runs a small corner store that sells chips, soda, and beer. I don't know how the laws are being written in other cities that they're allowing for recreational marijuana sales, but you can't sell wine in a grocery store, but can I sell recreational marijuana in a corner convenience store?
Well, those are all the details that are going to have to be looked
Vet
at.
it out.
Yeah.
Because this merchant asked me if that goes legal, can I start selling it in my store?
Yeah.
I'm thinking,
The answer is
okay.
no for now.
Yeah, I would say from what I've been hearing, I'm not sure.
Well, I think,
what I've been
yeah,
hearing, the expectation is no.
I think Colorado
know
has
that liquor
specific
stores are
areas
trying to
where they
push
do that.
for it, but the
Edible
expectation is
marijuana,
not.
stuff like that, or I don't think it's just allowed at convenience stores and things like that in Colorado, so I
I mean, I
think,
can see the correlation between selling Twizzlers and chips.
Yeah.
At the place that sells marijuana, but the idea is, because kids go to the places to buy the chips and the soda.
I get confused about the edible marijuana. How do you stop?
It's a redundant cycle, but.
Exactly.
A lot is to be determined here. I think that's the bottom line. All right, so we've got a motion on the table and ready to take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
All right.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much,
Yeah,
everyone.
Sorry, I held you up.
And
Is that
and
right?
we'll
No,
make
I
sure
think it's not on
to,
the committee.
yes, he is.
Oh, he is. Did you ask if he's a yes?
You said yes, Alfredo?
Go up.
The legislation.
Yes, I said aye.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Glad it's finally got out the document. I'm with you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Jerry.
Yes, thank you.